Good evening. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown live before lock. Yes, we've got a good one on tap today. Oddly enough, I kind of like it. San Francisco 49ers at home, laying 7.5. This pushed through 7 throughout the week against the Panthers. Spags, as always, happy to see you, man. I mentioned it this morning that it's McCaffrey's first game against the Panthers, and the Panthers look in search of their first Monday Night Football win since 2017. But in fairness, they haven't been scheduled on Monday Night Football more than like once or twice over the last 8-9 years.
Deservedly so, I would say. But, they're here today. It's funny, too, because, I feel like ESPN was putting the promo on pretty heavy for this game for, reasons unclear, where they were showing, 80s retro footage of, I don't know why, for the Panthers, a team that didn't exist in the 80s, but they had, the weird VHS tape, it's Panthers and Niners, as though it's, some sort of throwback matchup. But, yeah, it's an interesting one, I think, because the Niners defense, especially in the secondary, is, legit pretty bad. You are getting a lot of Niners dominant builds, both with Stokastic data and industry-wide. And I'll tell you what, Laffy, today I'm a little bit of a Panthers believer, and it doesn't hurt that Bryce Young threw for 440 yards last week. But I think the Panthers can get results here. I don't know if they win, but it seems like with the data pushing you so heavy towards Niners stuff, I'm willing to play some Panthers have fun here and get their revenge against Christian McCaffrey.
I mean, me too. Look, this is something Greg and I talked about this morning, but I started doing some digging this morning when I was looking for bets to post on Tails for the betting video, all that good stuff. And the Niners have been a pass funnel defense this year. Now, maybe not in the traditional, not in the sense like the Bucks a couple of years ago, or when I forget what year it was where the Bucks had a really good run defense and a really bad pass defense. Maybe this year after last night, but they may not be to that extent. But they're allowing the second highest, and I mentioned this for a reason, but they're allowing the second highest completion percentage to opposing passers. Only the Dolphins are allowing a higher one, and we know the Dolphins, how bad they've been this year. They're 31st in interceptions, ahead of only the Jets, who have 0. They're dead last in sacks. They're 31st in pass rush win rate, which obviously contributes to the lack of success in pass coverage. And they allowed Jacoby Brissett, whether they sat back on defense a little bit last week or not, to record the most completions in a single game in NFL history. And Bryce Young is the type of guy who will, take those passes when you give it to him, and Tedero McMillan continues to evolve. So you know what? Maybe this is a game where the Niners stomp them out. I would put nothing past the Panthers, who just a couple weeks ago lost and scored 7 points to the Saints. So that's not, look, I didn't forget about the Bills stomping them out 40-6 in their own house. But I do think they have it in them, and we've seen that at least this season. They're tied for the divisional lead at 6-5. They can take sole possession if they win tonight. They're not the same level of garbage Panthers team we've seen in previous seasons. There's at least something there.
Yeah, I fully agree here. And I'm with you. To take it back a step too, the Niners defense for, I'd say about a month now has been jumping out in my data. Of course, if you watch these shows, you guys know I swear by some of the advanced metrics, the EPA stuff in particular. The Niners pass defense, numerically about as bad as anybody in football. Not quite, the Commanders tier. I think there are some others that might be a little bit worse overall, but giving up 0.16 EPA per dropback is a bad number for a Niners team that I think people still think is good defensively, and they're not. They've had a lot of guys hurt. Fred Warner going out this year doesn't help, but they weren't looking good before that. But 0.16 EPA per dropback, 0.19 EPA per pass in the red zone, it doesn't get better. And usually if you're better in the red zone, it does signify that, okay, maybe this team puts it together at some point. They're giving up a 0.2 EPA per red zone pass. So I think for me, what comes down to it is that we saw Bryce Young be good last week. I know this is not Stokastic talk, but I think when you see Bryce Young be good, and this is what happened last year, it's when he looks good, he's usually going to be okay for a little bit. That's sort of the Bryce Young experience. And the season starts over again. I'm sure they're going to pay him $160 million this offseason. He'll be terrible to start next year, but you keep getting the glimpses of him looking good. And in particular, keying in on Ted McMillan, getting Coker back a good amount last week. He was playing 50 snaps last game. He's playing pretty well, or at least, well enough to get out there. Liggett's out there doing as much as Leggett can as well. And you have Tremble and Sanders, two competent enough tight ends. And, Rico, really, I think the threat of the run game too is making it easier for Bryce Young. So I think really everything bodes well for, playing more Panthers today. And certainly, if nothing else, you default to the ownership. Really everything is Niners dominant stuff. So if you just play 3 Panthers, you're probably more unique than a large portion of the field. And that's kind of the hills I'm willing to die on a showdown slate.
Are you willing to die on the? I mean, the McCaffrey hill is something else entirely, though. You know, we could both make this same statement and agree that Carolina is at least very viable today, and it is a showdown slate. They're the only other fucking team on the slate. But
You might want to play some Carolina today. So
yeah,
at least get one player in.
Consider it. Yeah, think about it if you want to submit, legal lineups. But even so, though, McCaffrey, I mentioned it earlier this morning. His optimal captain rate was still higher than his captain ownership. Like, I'll pull this up for you right now, Spags, real quick, and throw it up on the screen for those of you guys who are curious, because I find it very interesting. Christian McCaffrey, usually when you see a guy with this much captain ownership, he is going to have negative leverage at captain. He has essentially half of the time that we sim this, he was the top overall scorer. That's crazy. He's the optimal captain 35% of the time, getting around right now projected for just under 31% captain ownership. So still positively leveraged at the captain spot. That is really tough to do no matter who you are.
Yeah, I mean, look, I got him 40% in the semi round before the show at captain. Talk about top 150 lineups with Stokastic data. He's coming up above the field, and the flex spot seems like you're getting a little bit less, or at least I did in the sim that I ran, getting 41%, field at 45.5. And it's one of those things where I think if you're playing, 150, if you're playing, a mini max plus a couple 20 maxes plus putting a few entries in the Millie Maker kind of thing, I'd be willing to get away from McCaffrey a little bit in some lineups. Like, I think in particular, some of the Rico captain lineups seem to sim pretty well, where you don't have McCaffrey, you play sort of the Panthers control the ball and pull off the upset kind of thing. But practically for me, as somebody that's doing this show, playing the 220 maxes or the bigger 20 maxes, putting a few entries in the Millie Maker, I just locked McCaffrey. I just took every lineup I get with him. And I just think that's the most logical move. The projection math is he's 7 points higher than the next guy, Brock Purdy. It's such a chasm, and it's hard to imagine a world too where I love, you guys watch these shows, like Loughran and I love to spin up yarns about how games could go, because that's showdowns for you. A million things can happen. But how does he not make a winning lineup today? I really, besides injury.
Injury.
Yeah, maybe you get Brian Robinson, then you get the siege backup situation where Brian Robinson really pays off. But it's even that, he might still make enough to make it in the flex, because of the PPR scam he has going with almost 9 targets a game. So I'm playing McCaffrey everywhere. I think certainly if you want to cut away from the field, if you want to be really unique and willing to lose your entry fee, playing 5 entries or something, don't play McCaffrey. And some of them, I think that's the move. But to me, he just feels unfadeable in the spot.
Yeah, I don't even have anything to add to that. I agree entirely. Would you consider captaining Bryce Young?
Oh yeah, I did in some of my lineups. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Greg and I have a disagreement here, and his point is perfectly reasonable. Just essentially that, you're talking about a guy that doesn't really have rushing upside, and to some extent I get that, but we've actually seen some, immobile quarterbacks, statuesque quarterbacks have some captain-worthy games. Joe Flacco against the Steelers not long ago. I don't know I can't remember if Chase would have been the cap. I don't think he was, actually. I can't remember who it was. Could have been Higgins if he didn't go down on that play, but I don't remember. It might have been Freiermuth, honestly. I think it was. Flacco had a monster game. You do see some of those guys have insane. Who was the optimal captain last night? Was it Devontae or was it Staff? Probably Devontae, right?
I would think Devontae, but I would say I fell asleep before the end of that game because it was not even competitive, even a little.
Dude, I forced myself to sleep to not have to watch the end of that game.
It was close though. Stafford has been there before, and that's the thing. A Stafford type can hit a captain where you create enough value from multiple pass catchers. That can happen. I would never rule out a starting QB at captain, especially if they're 4.5% owned like Bryce Young. If Bryce Young were 20%, I would go even Brock Purdy at 18% ownership, you're getting less of him in the sim because it feels like that ground's gonna be pretty well covered. But for Bryce Young, he runs 1.5 times a game. It's not a lot. I agree with it there. But if McMillan hits, if one of Leggett plus Tremble plus Sanders hits, Jalen Coker, it's possible that there isn't enough upside to make it as captain. But Bryce, sustains a couple pass catchers and can make it. I would never rule out Bryce Young, but I did also I forced myself to get to Bryce Young too, which you could question just as equally.
If you were somebody that wanted to boost him, or wanted to boost the Panthers in general, what do you think the wisest way to do it would be? Like, because I know if you just boost Young, he'll end up taking a lot of Panthers along with him. But if you're saying I'd like to get some more of these balanced builds, maybe even some more just Panthers in general, what do you think the best way to do it is if you're using the Sims or just in general?
For me, what I like to do is just go through the stack tool and select, Carolina 4, Carolina 5, Carolina 3, and just do it that way where, you have if you go to the sim screen, you can see the stack column. It'll say Carolina 1, SF5, and all those top lineups. You're finding a lot of Niners heavy stuff up top. One thing that I'll do sometimes in a sim in a day like today is I'll just take the best 3-3 builds, the best 4-2 Panthers builds, the best 5-1 Panthers builds I can find if there are some of those coming up, and just roll it that way. So you can definitely boost star-wise and stuff like that. Like I think boosting Bryce Young, I wouldn't mind the slate personally. But I think for me, it's more just like I want to get away from what I think are going to be projection forward builds where you get in your cash game lineup with industry projections, you get a Niners 5-1. Like one of my general showdown rules of thumb is if you're getting the 5-1 naturally with just projections, you're better off probably not playing 5-1s very much. Like I know, Sims tool, you can trust that as much as you want. But I do think like for me, just getting away from that and all the people trying to make a Niners onslaught happen and just play a little more balanced game. I mean, Texans last week was like a great example of that where nobody wanted to play Texans. And I think 4 Texans made it in the final lineup.
Yeah, dude. It ended up, yeah. I would assume that let's see, 1, 2. I mean, Mills had to have been in there, right? With how bad Buffalo was.
It was at least 3. I think it was 4 until like the last play of the game where like Woody Marks fell off or something like that. But I'm pretty sure it was at least 3 and it might have been 4 Texans on the third.
Yeah, like Higgins would have been in there for sure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely a possibility. And I'm okay with it. Now, I'm also perfectly fine with some 5-1 Niners decks. Again, this is one of those unique games in which the Panthers are a strange team, so you never exactly know which way they're going to go. And what I mean by that is, again, they have been super unpredictable all season long. They've come in and they've had some highly, even last year, they almost beat the Eagles. Had Xavier Legette not dropped that ball late in the game. They almost beat the Chiefs. They almost beat the Chiefs too. That came down to the final drive, right? Like this team was rolling would be the wrong term, but they were very much competing over the latter stages of the year. And Bryce Young was at quarterback. They've done that a lot this year. And then they've also just had some abysmal games. So would it shock me today if under the bright lights, the Carolina Panthers completely flop? No, it would not surprise me if the optimal was Captain McCaffrey with Kittle, Purdy, like a Kyle Juszczyk in there, and name somebody else, Jennings with a McMillan run back. Not that you could pay for all of those guys. A Jatavian Sanders run back. That wouldn't shock me. But it also, another build that I think is kind of interesting today would be you go like McCaffrey captain with 49ers defense, and then you still have Bryce Young and Tedderella McMillan and Jatavian Sanders in the same build. Because how many times have we seen that happen on showdown slates where the defense ends up still being optimal because they go up so much early, and then the quarterbacks are forced to throw. A perfect example of that would have been last week. I'm not saying that the Niners defense, if it was a showdown slate, would have been optimal, but they went up, Spags, by what, three scores over Arizona, and then they just kind of sat back in a sense and let Wilson and Jacoby Brissett and Trey McBride and even Dortch put up monster games. But Arizona got smoked.
Yeah, no, I mean, they weren't really in that game at all. I mean, they were by the first half, I feel like that was out of distance, but obviously, in football, teams usually do keep trying. And when you drop back a lot, and frankly, that's the thing too, like Brissett, obviously, I think it's become a hallmark of this run as him as a starter, but like Bryce Young, when Carolina does get their ass kicked, Bryce Young keeps dropping back too. He's not as good as a Brissett might be, and he might not create the same fantasy production as Brissett clearly has every time he's had a chance this year. But that's part of how Bryce Young put up a lot of yards last week is like they were in a game where he had to keep dropping back, keep making it work. Rico wasn't really getting the results as much in that spot. I think for how it looks to me, the biggest thing that I feel, from both doing my content today, watching some stuff around the industry, Stokastic chat this morning, everybody wants to play the Niners dominant stuff. And when you get that and you also get it in the data, I just think you're better off for a showdown. And this could be the wrong approach. Like I'm playing the way that I feel most comfortable with, and that's worked the best for me over the course of time. Whenever I see that, I'm like, can this game just be competitive? And like, doesn't mean the Carolina wins outright even, but like, can Carolina hang into this as a 1 touchdown dog and just be good until the fourth quarter while putting up some yardage? I think they can. And I think you just go through the sim and it's like 5-1 Niners, 5-1 Niners, 5-1 Niners, 1 Carolina 5-1, 5-1 Niners, 4-2 Niners. It's so Niners dominant that you win more money if Carolina is just the barest modicum of competent.
Yeah, man. No. Also, I had another question for you, and we're all over the place to start this off, but I would much rather hit on the things that I find important, and hopefully you guys do as well. So you have plenty of time to build your lineups as we do this show. And I'm going to get to the Sims in a second. What I'm actually doing is I'm trying to get my lineups in first because I fucked them up last week, and you knew I was. But,
you put in one placeholder for like 190 lineups or something.
Yeah, guess what? No, I played fewer lineups. So I think it was like 50 lineups that day.
Okay.
And it was, thank God it wasn't in the main. But I did have, I think I had like 10 in the spoiler alert, they did not cash.
It would have been okay if it cashed. I feel like you'd go like, woof, like we got there, we're fine. I ran a train, but whatever. When it doesn't cash, you feel the weight of your mistake even more.
There's no better feeling than accidentally submitting like a single lineup or a dummy lineup and it min cashes across everything. Like in DFS and tournaments, it's really tough to make more than your entry fees each week, even with diverse lineups. So if you do something like that and you end up doubling up or a little bit more than doubling up at the end of the day, you're like, wow, man, I should do that more often.
I must be a genius.
Yeah, you should not do that. But not nated. Okay, so here's the transitive property argument. I got to call this out because, and by the way, thank you for watching, but Carolina beat Dallas. San Fran isn't better than Dallas. This type of argument and thinking, man, I'm telling you, I promise you, I hope this will get you into a lot of trouble. So I'll give you a really good example of this, right, Spags? In week 10, the Saints beat the Panthers. I'd almost argue they embarrassed the Panthers, right? It was like 16-7. The Panthers couldn't get anything going. The next week, the Panthers beat the Falcons for the second time this season. Yesterday, the Falcons beat the hell out of the Saints without Penix and without Drake London. So Saints beat the Panthers, Panthers beat the Falcons, Falcons beat the Saints. What does that tell you? Nothing. Exactly. See what I'm saying? It doesn't, you can't make the argument of like this team beat this team and this team beat this team, right? The Dallas Cowboys just beat the Eagles. So are the Dallas Cowboys better than the Eagles? You know what I mean? And the Panthers beat the Dallas Cowboys. At the end of the season, sure, you can look back over the course of 17 games and be like, all right, that's a decent representation of what this team is. Across 1 week, if that's what you're saying, then okay. But I don't know if that is. What I'm saying, Spags, is that across 1 week, it truly doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I think that's 100% the case. I mean, really what you should read into that is that football is a very volatile sport. One game, what can happen in one game does not indicate in the team's entire season. I mean, really an entire football season is a small sample size. One game of football season is like way too small of a sample size. So, I get it. Look, I say this is somebody that is, again, like mostly in the bag for Carolina tonight because I think the matchup is about as good as they'll have. And, I saw with my eyes them do something useful last week. But I do think here, like, you want to come about that the right way, which is that the Niners defense kind of sucks. It's maybe a little bit overrated. The Panthers a little bit better than people realize, whatever. But just the transitive property math, I fully agree. Like you really get down some bad rabbit holes. They're going to make you make some bad plays if you do that all the time.
Yeah. And again, I think we're saying the same thing here, but like, this is not an argument of, this is certainly not an argument of the Panthers can't beat the Niners. Not at all. I think we're both saying that it's very possible they could go out there today and beat the Niners, but just that I try not to look at it from that perspective because that can get you into some serious trouble. Anyway, all right, my lineups are in. Let me make sure that I do not screw this up. Right, it's very easy to screw it up on live before lock. You're better at this than I am. I'll tell you that much.
Oh yeah, I like to get it done in advance if I can. Though the NBA is screwing with me today because Jalen Smith. If anybody playing NBA, Jalen Smith's not starting for the Bulls, so that's I don't know, it's annoying.
Good thing I'm not. All right, so here we go. I got the Sims pulled up here. I wanted to ask you this question as we dive into this. And if you guys don't mind, atone for your sins this evening. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. It goes a long way, and we appreciate you greatly for all of your contributions. Seriously. All right, so number one, let me clear all these boosts. What are you doing with the defenses? Because if you run the Sims on factory settings right now, they are going to give you a good amount of the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, you get in the top 150 I ran for the Stokastic sim. I got 33% Panthers D in the flex. Fields at 12. You know, we talk about this a lot, and it's paid off. You know, the way that we've talked about a few times where, you know, we've literally Loughran and I've been like, I don't know why you'd want to play this defense. And, you know, we've agreed on that. But then it's like, well, the ownership's so low, you play them. I do think the Panthers kind of fit that criteria today. Now, do I expect the Panthers to have a good showing against the Niners? No. I mean, their secondary is about as bad as the Niners. A little bit better with only a 0.13 EPA per dropback by the Panthers D allowed as opposed to 0.16 by the Niners. But, you know, two defenses that are not the best in the past, you know, the pass area, but a good red zone defense for Carolina overall, good rushing defense, at least a little bit better than the Niners. Like, I think those things are reasons you could take that shot. But more than anything, it's just the variance of the fact that people will be playing endless Brock Purdy today, endless 49ers. If you get the Panthers D, you know, getting that one takeaway that could be, or a return or whatever the case may be, getting a few sacks plus a touchdown is sort of the recipe for it. It doesn't take a lot for that to happen. And I think, you know, people miss that a lot. Like, even Texans D in that, you know, that Bills slate was not played as much as they should have been because people are like, well, Josh Allen's going to kick their ass. And it's like, well, no, you know, they got a bunch of sacks, you know, whatever. That happens time and time again where I would not refute the Panthers D, but if you do the Tom Kennedy, the Stokastic CEO move and bump them down a half point, maybe get a little bit less, but it does seem like you're still going to get some no matter what.
Yeah, I bumped them down, but I'm not Xing them out. Is there a Scott Matlock on this slate?
I mean, I think you have the original Scott Matlock, Kyle Juszczyk in some respects.
Oh, you know, Kyle Juszczyk today. Actually, I was getting a decent amount of him earlier in the day. I don't know if I still am at the flex. Let me see here.
He had a real egregious projection this morning. I don't know if it's come down a little bit.
Still 20%, which I don't think is all that crazy. They've been notorious in these primetime games for using him in strange ways at the goal line. He has, I think, Spags, he has 2 targets in 4 straight, which at that price point is actually decent. And I think the other reason that a guy like Kyle Juszczyk is going to get some ownership, or we should get some exposure to him, he does. He has multiple targets in 4 straight games. That's really, actually, as a matter of fact, Juszczyk on the season, and I know there have been some injuries, but he has 21 targets through 11 games. He's essentially averaging 2 targets a game at 1,200. And because he's so good at his position, he's going to be on the field the whole game, or a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, what would you guess his anytime TD odds are?
Oh man, it depends. Books like to nerf these type of spots. I'll say 7-1.
Yeah, so plus 750 on FanDuel looks like the best odds, but plus 650 DraftKings, plus 675. Yeah.
Yeah, I do wonder if there is like a Scott Matlock type, which, by the way, I came across this video today of a guy who lost his money and was on the streets from betting Scott Matlock. And like myself, Spags, did not bet him the one day he scored, even though he said he would. Do you want to see this?
It's actually, yes, that's the sad version of your side of the coin where you're like, whatever, I missed the 1 week. That guy's like, I'm living and dying. My mortgage is on the line for Scott Matlock.
Yeah.
You should have bet him week 9 against the Titans.
Yeah, well, Chad forgot to remind me.
Bummer. I got him at 50-1.
Is that crazy or what?
Great usage of AI. That was worth somebody dying in Iowa because of the heat generated by a data center.
I made that 25 times to get it right, so multiple people died.
It looked good. It did look. I gotta say,
pretty good, right?
Right? It's crazy. Yeah.
I thought that was pretty solid. I got a good laugh out of that when I saw it myself as he speeds away. I said with a smug, self-satisfied expression, he says, "Bummer, I got him at 50-1."
Poor homeless guy though. That guy was the one I was rooting for. I hope he gets it right.
You should have got him in week 9 against the Titans.
Yeah, you should have listened to the chat. That's what we always say here. You got to listen to
Well,
the
he
chat.
said chat forgot to remind me. The whole point
Oh, yeah.
is that I forgot to bet him in week 9 because I told chat to remind me to bet him, and you guys didn't.
You know who
I'll
would have
take it.
reminded you? Sora would have. Sora would
I
have remembered to
should-
tell you.
That's actually a great idea. I should set a reminder. But no, we're getting 20% use check. I'm fine with that. Like it doesn't bother me at all. $1,200. He's going to play what, like 50, 60% of snaps, probably, Spags?
Let's
50?
see. He played 29 last week, 31, 44.
But those are not percentages, but raw snaps.
No, just pure count. Look, he's playing more. Like Jake Tongas was coming up a little bit, both with the Sims this morning and with data around the industry. And I was like, why? Like he's not really playing. I think that use check is a better play than the Tongas here. Luke Farrell's mostly in the block. He's playing also less snaps. I mean, 16 snaps for Farrell. So I think use check is a better play than a lot of the shitty value plays in the slate, but I still feel like he'll be overowned because people will be like, Kyle Juszczyk. Oh, Kyle Juszczyk's getting some targets. Like the same logic we just had is going to make him end up like 20% played, which kind of ruins it.
But again, I mean, we haven't projected at 10%, which is pretty low.
Yeah.
I will point out, and the only reason I'm really interested, and it's not, there's no interest. It's just I'm okay with $1,400. He's really cheap. Like he's dirt cheap. So I'm okay. I'm okay with Kyle Juszczyk being that cheap. And Jatavian Sanders is another guy that I think is viable because like this is a guy over 18% targets per route run. Not bad. That's not great, but not bad. I think he's pretty athletic, and I think he's actually a pretty decent pass catching tight end. We've seen flashes. And if San Fran continues to be a pass funnel D, if they continue to struggle to get to Bryce Young, which in fairness, Bryce Young under pressure this year actually hasn't been that bad at all. Then this is one of those spots where you're talking sub 3K, $2,800 for, let's not say a full-time player necessarily, Spags, but for that price, usually on a slate like this, you're getting a guy that is far from a full-time player that's getting like 25% of snaps, who's typically seeing anywhere from 1 to 2 targets a game, where Sanders has like the 4 to 7 target upside. And I think he's okay here. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that scares me a little about Sanders is he is playing less than Tremble right now. Last week, Jatavian Sanders played 38 snaps. Tremble played 40-something, played 46. So that's not great. But like I think for Carolina, part of the appeal of going with Bryce Young, so you do have some cheap options, even Leggett, who played less snaps than Coker last week, but is still in the mix pretty meaningfully. Bryson Tremaine, I think, is also playable because he played almost 30 snaps last week. You have a lot of cheap guys for the Carolina side in particular that, you know, to me, like I don't mind use check, but I think taking the shot on Carolina and guys that are getting pretty meaningful work as, you know, not full-time receivers, but rotational receivers, I think they're fairly appealing on the slate. And yeah, Sanders, I think I liked him a lot before the year, but I think Tremble, like nobody's going to recognize, like I didn't know it. Like Tremble played more snaps than Sanders. Like both tight ends, I think will be under-owned for how many snaps they're getting, if nothing else.
Yeah, I could see that. Also, though, they ran exactly the same amount. They both ran 20 routes, and Tremble was targeted 2 times to Sanders 4. So there's some nuance to that, I think, right? I mean, like you had Mitchell Evans run 12 routes last week as well. So I don't know. What do you make of Mitchell Evans running 12 routes and having 2 targets? Who was the other one you mentioned? Bryson Tremaine.
Yeah, so he's like a slot guy who I think is now getting more work than the other guys besides Coker. But he played 27 snaps last week after being presumed inactive the week before.
How much of that was at the expense of Jimmy Horn Jr.? I would assume some of it.
I mean, Horn snaps were down to 7 last week, but only 11 the week before that, 14 before. So, you know, there's always ebbs and flows in rotations where teams start to like a guy more. Maybe they don't like him as much the next week. I ended up getting Tremaine just because of the salary, and he allowed some lineups to work, and he definitely cuts the amount of dupes coming in. But yeah, like, I mean, I think Tremaine is currently a better play than Horn, but if you got either one, they're kind of the same dice roll. That's not Tet McMillan, Leggett, or Coker, basically.
When you're looking at some of the other cheap guys too, and I can actually sort here within the Sims by, cheap options, Sky Moore, Trevor Etienne, Luke Farrell, Jimmy Horn, Tremaine. Yeah, like Tremaine should be out there. Juszczyk will be out there. I think that's a pretty decent way to kind of sort through all of this too. Who's actually going to be out there? Yeah, Mitchell Evans, will he be out there? Well, he played 30 snaps last week. Tremble, Sanders, and Evans all played a decent amount of snaps last week, and they combined for 8 targets, 4 to Sanders, 4 to Evans, 4 to Tremble. I'd say all of them at least have some value individually. I wouldn't take away from any of that. And maybe there is an argument to be made, and maybe this is the argument you're making, that you would drop some of that Sanders exposure down. I could see myself doing that a little bit, but I still do prefer him over Tremble and Evans, just because from a pass catching standpoint, he has been more involved this season. And it doesn't mean he's great. It doesn't mean he's, set to pop off for a monster game, because simply hasn't had one yet. But, last 2 games, 9 targets. The game earlier this season where they had to throw a bunch, he was targeted 9 times. So he should get something here. It also stands to reason too, though. There have been so many games where, like those Rico Dowdle games, or the games where they run the ball a lot and they have success on the ground, that Bryce Young just doesn't throw.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the biggest issues with Bryce Young, is that he's not dropping back as much as you'd expect a player on a team that's, behind a lot, generally not, the best overall. But I think really, for me, what it comes down to for the Carolina guys is, like, I really don't expect many of them to be particularly good. But for a showdown, I kind of view the tight end role, the Tremble / Sanders / Evans role, I view that kind of the same way as I view Bryson Tremaine, as like whatever, Jimmy Horn. These guys are going to pop up. I think those guys are behind. Like Tet McMillan to me is like, if anybody's going to hit from Carolina, it's Tet McMillan. Like in terms of like receivers, then, Coker played 50 plus snaps last week. I still view he and Leggett as being, closer to 1-to-1. But I think that's sort of generally how I view these kind of things, especially when I'm trying to do, unique builds and play more Bryce Young, is like, I want to get the most Tet McMillan with Bryce. I then want to get the second most, Coker plus Leggett. Then I want to get a tier of like getting Tremaine and Sanders and whatever. But like, I think Carolina's got more guys that can hit today, even if none of them are particularly exciting.
Here's a question for you from Carl Sinclair. And I ask you this because Xavier Leggett, you've mentioned him a few times now. If you want to talk about a guy whose opportunities are all over the map, I mean, seriously, look no further than Leggett. Since week 5, when he returned, 2 targets, 3 targets, 11, 3, 3, 1, 8. And you're paying $6,400 for him. He could just have the same role as Mitchell Evans today, or the same role as Jatavian Sanders, right? Or Tremaine, or really underwhelm beyond like a Jalen Coker. Because I get a little bit uncomfortable having the McMillan and Leggett paying that much alongside Coker with the young triple stack. I think, like Carolina, maybe a little more than I do. That to me is a tough spot to get to based on the salaries.
I think it'd be tough to play those 3 receivers together, especially like you mentioned, like paying that for Leggett seems tough. I think part of the reason you play Leggett is that people are going to be cramming Jalen Coker in a little bit more because he is appreciably cheaper and he played more snaps last week. And, and he's one of those players too. Like it happens, Travion Henderson recently, the moment that Travion Henderson had any signs of life, the ownership came up exponentially because people were like, this guy's going to be good. Then he wasn't good. Then he wasn't good. Then he wasn't good. Oh, finally we can play him. He's good. So they want to chase that. I think for Coker, it's the same thing, where the Coke heads, as they were called in the best ball community in the offseason, so stoked to draft Coker. He gets hurt, has a hamstring injury that was like debilitating, cost him but 6 weeks to start the year. He's still not getting targeted a lot. Only a 13% target per out run compared to 18 for Leggett, 25% for Tet McMillan, 20% for Sanders, 15% for Tommy Tremble. So I think there's meat on the bones for the other guys too. Like I'm playing Coker in about a third of my lineup. So like I'm getting him enough, but if I'm not getting him, I think there's a decent chance that the guy who's actually had draft capital, like people forget, I guess, but Coker was an undrafted guy from Holy Cross. Leggett is an SEC player who's built like AJ Brown and had freak athletic testing. I'm going to tend to default to the guy still, even if the snap share is, as long as it's relatively close. I want the guy who's like special, and I don't think Coker's shown specialness to me.
I think it's a perfectly reasonable take. Not to mention that people in the best ball streets will certainly latch on to certain players. I mean, they'll become, it's like a phenomenon, even though maybe we find out down the road that it shouldn't be. And that's no disrespect to any of those guys, because, you know, I'm liable to do the same thing. Not really like the hive mind mentality, but there are certain guys where I'm like, I just got to get to, and then halfway through the season, I go, okay, maybe I was wrong, but maybe the jury is still out on Jalen Coker. Probably is. You know, he hasn't played much this season. But our friend Common Penny said it was tough to get in lineup. Sims weren't very interested. And Common Pennies, that's exactly where I was going with this conversation, Spags. Xavier Legette has the most negatively simmed player ROI on this slate, believe it or not, at minus 47. We are under the field significantly to him. And it actually makes me want to look and see, what is Xavier Legette's, what is his receiving yards prop? Let's see. I mean, it has to be like in the 30s. It's in the 20s, dude. Xavier Legette has a 24.5 receiving yard prop tonight. If you like him, that could be a great spot. Coker's at 29.5, 30. McMillan's got to be in the 60s, right? High 60s for McMillan. Jatavian Sanders is at anywhere from 16 to 18.5 on this slate. Tommy Tremble, do we have one? 14.5. There's a 10.5. BetMGM is just always such a massive outlier in some of these spots. So yeah, that Bryson Tremaine. Oh, there you go. 1.5 yards, Spags. Interesting.
He's going to pay off. If he hits that 1.5, he's going to make a winning lineup.
Yeah, he might. Juszczyk doesn't even have one.
No, hate to see that.
I'm surprised he doesn't. Like yeah. But that is why, if you guys are wondering, you know, a lot of projections, not just ours, but projections in general, there are a lot of that'll be derived from what the player prop market is showing. And 24.5, that's actually lower than I thought.
It's not great. It's not great, but yeah, he played 44 snaps last week. It's a little bit higher than I thought. Coker was at 54. I just think the main thing for me is that Coker, I mean, straight up Stokastic has Coker projected better. So that's what that is. But, you know, ultimately I view these projections, especially in a showdown slate, as incredibly fragile. And I get it. You know, the chat immediately responds like it sucks, like whatever. I get it. He does, like he has mostly sucked in his career, but he is still commanding targets at a better rate. He's still playing, 40 plus snaps. He's still out there, and I don't think the Niners are a good pass defense. So that's the difference between a sim that you're paying so much for and people get winning millions of dollars off of, and me wearing a money hat. And I think that's where it's okay for those things to be different. I'm playing a little more like it today.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm just explaining why we're seeing.
Oh, no, I'm more defending myself from the chat, because they'd be like, this fucking guy can't project shit. It's a showdown, guys. Let's roll the dice. Why not?
Got to do some weird stuff. Yeah, DeMarcus Robinson does not sim out well. We had a question about Chuba Hubbard on FanDuel at 5,800. I mean, look, it's cheap. Chuba Hubbard's role has really diminished significantly, and even at $4,400 on DraftKings, what are we projecting him for, Spags? I think it's reasonable to say you project Chuba Hubbard for like 5 touches.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. What was he played last week snap-wise? 15. Most RBs are getting the ball like 40 to 50% of their snaps. So your 7.5 touches would be like the max, I would think, for Chuba. Yeah,
and he's got a 4.5 receiving yards prop. You look at rushing attempts for Chuba, 4.5. That's what I expected it to be. So, and that means, of course, that you're going to be talking about super low rushing prop too. So, that's probably what, like 13.5 or something. It's tough. And I'm not saying, again, to Spag's point, you really should not just only use props to make your decisions, but you should be using them as a base. Like at the very least, you should be using them as a barometer for where these guys are at, and like a Ricky Pearsall today. It's funny because the Carolina Panthers defense against wide receivers actually hasn't been that bad this year. You have a very good corner in J.C. Horn. They have struggled more against tight ends. I do like George Kittle quite a bit today, as a matter of fact. I like George Kittle a lot. And I think, Brock Purdy loves George. How do you not? The guy's always going to be on the field. He's the preeminent tight end in the league. He's the best. He's overall. I don't know. Is there a better tight end than football? Like overall, everything that the position entails. Is there a better tight end?
Not at this stage, I don't think. I mean, you might like a few guys more as a pass catcher, but the blocking stuff too. I mean, Kittle turned around the run, like blocking entirely for the team when he first came in. It was also Mac Jones not really feeding him targets too, but like part of the reason his target share was so low the first couple weeks he came back in is that he was out there blocking like a bull. And yeah, I love Brock Bowers. Tyler Warren's a little bit more of a Kittle type, but obviously isn't all the way there talent wise. Kittle brings that 1-2 punch of it's absolute game-breaking ceiling in terms of the pass catching stuff, especially with Brock Purdy, but then the blocking too. Like he's probably the most well-rounded tight end in football by a decent margin, I would think.
Yeah. Kelsey, but he's slowing down. Yeah. It's not, I'm saying though, as far as blocking goes, for those of you guys, I mean, yeah, McBride's the man. Bowers is great. Bowers at a quarterback. That offensive line is the most disastrous thing I think I've ever seen, man. 10 sacks yesterday. That's an embarrassment to put out to march out onto the field, man. It's just, it is so bad. But
well, at least Chip Kelly's getting 10 mil for whatever for working a couple months, and now he gets to chill, playing his next job.
And now he's gone. Who would have thought that? Look, as an Eagles fan, I can assure you that I was happy to see him go anywhere but Philadelphia. You know.
It was fun for a little bit when he was the coach there. He made Mark Sanchez useful. He made a couple fantasy guys useful. I didn't mind the Chip Kelly era.
What, in Philly?
I didn't mind it from a fantasy perspective. I had no fan.
Yeah, no, it actually worked for a season. And then they just figured it out. It worked. I mean, it worked. There was a game, for those of you Eagles or Redskins fans, that remember that Eagles-Redskins game at the time. And the Eagles just absolutely annihilated them. They scored 50 plus. It was a night game. I think Deshaun Jackson had 2 or 3 deep touchdowns. Like all of that, man, you're going, oh, this was Michael Vick too. That beautiful left-handed throw on the deep ball. You're like, yeah, exactly, EMAC, the Monday night Mike Vick game. I watched the highlights of that a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact. You're thinking, man, this could be something good. Then they just kind of figured him out, and it was not good after that.
It was also the battle with the front office too, and I think Chip Kelly got a little high in his own supply, and then
they put Howie in the broom closet, which is insane because Howie literally is the architect of 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think he did. I think he was better. It's one of those things too. Again, it's football. It's all like it's very volatile. But I think it's one of those things where he didn't make didn't make friends, rather made enemies instead. And then even the way he handled the media and stuff like that got people to turn against him. So it was a lot of things that came together. And if you keep winning, that shit doesn't matter. But if you get any sort of warts at all, then it kind of gets exacerbated from there. And I think he really lost political battles as much as he did like football games.
Yep. Yeah, it was nuts. And no, it was not Andy Reid Truffle. It was Chip Kelly, because I believe it was Chip Kelly's first game as a head coach. So we won't waste any more time on this, but I'm pretty sure it was Chip Kelly's first game as a head coach, and they dropped a 50 burger on him. And then he traded LaShawn McCoy for Kiko Alonso, which was insane. And then got rid of Deshaun Jackson, and they talked about it being because he had gang ties, which was insane as well. So you listen to those guys talk about him, man, they despised him. But anyway, how do you want to break down these San Francisco 49er pass catchers? I mentioned I like Kittle. Kittle's my preferred today. Do you have like a hierarchy here, kind of an order that you're looking at least amongst the big 3 and Kittle, Jennings, and Pearsall?
For me, I got the most Jennings, I think, because of going with a little more Panthers heavy stuff with the set of lineups I selected. I'm not crazy about Jennings overall. Like, I think he's the easiest one to get to projection wise. The fact he's a little bit cheaper than Pearsall as well makes him come up for me a little bit more in the flex, a little bit more a captain. I like Kittle the most. If you can afford to get to him, great. I think though, with Kittle, his projection at 14.3, 8,600, Jennings 12.3 at 7K. I think it's a little bit easier to get to Jennings. That might make Kittle the more appealing play. But I got more Jennings. I would love to have gotten more Kittle. I just couldn't make it work salary wise. And Pearsall, I think Pearsall's got the biggest upside in the fact that like he showed nothing in his return to the lineup, Like, I think if he goes nuts today, the ownership's could be so much lower than if he had a respectable game in his return. But I think it's still like Kittle should be the one ideally you get the most. If you don't get him, Jennings and Pearsall, I think is just the one that like I didn't get enough of, and I feel like he's going to break the slate. But you got to give somewhere. Yeah,
he could. I'm still a big believer in Ricky Pearsall. I think Ricky Pearsall is really good. It's tough because you have to, you can't get all of everybody. You can't get a ton of Pearsall, Jennings, McCaffrey, and Kittle. You can't. If you end up doing that, you're going to be super underweight. I mean, you can actually do that. It just means that you're going to end up being underweight on, God, what? You're going to be underweight on pretty much everybody for Carolina, including Dowdle and McMillan and Bryce Young. And I actually like Bryce Young at the flex spot today. I don't love him at captain, but I like him at flex. I boosted him a little bit, not in this run, but in the last one. I will do this for those of you guys, though, who might be curious. So if I remove the uniques, because I was running this on 2 uniques and just run it with no uniques, how much does it change our exposure to guys like McCaffrey and everybody else? Yeah, so McCaffrey gets the 51% exposure at captain. That's a lot, but I don't hate it. 45% at flex. So almost every lineup has Christian McCaffrey. A lot of Brock Purdy at the flex. Not much at captain, but you're still talking like 75% of your lineups with Brock Purdy in captain or flex, mostly flex. And then you look at it, really, really thins out once you get down here. There's Brian Robinson, 16, McMillan, 16, Sanders, Young, Coker, Juszczyk, Jennings, all of these guys. As a matter of fact, Pearsall's all the way down there at 8%. So if you don't run any uniques within the Sims Spags, you're looking at Purdy, Matt Gay, Dowdle, and McCaffrey at 45+% at the flex, and nobody else at 30% or higher.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things with the Sims and why, I always try to say here, and I know Lofty does the same thing. Like, it's important to get your hands on the Sims. And people always ask, like, what are the optimal settings and whatever? And it's going to vary. It depends upon how you want to approach things. You want to spread your exposure around a little bit more, things like that. But you're seeing here, like, what the true best plays are. And I think too, Lofty's got some great ways right now. You can't get in probably in time for this slate, but you get in for some upcoming slates, perhaps, in the Sims. Yeah, but you could bet it live and get in for Thanksgiving and get in for here. Okay, so check this out. If you wanted to get a free month of The Sims, you just use the link in the description. I'm gonna give you guys a little secret right here. Okay, not this because you know about this, but I'm gonna tell you something fantastic. If you do this, Spags, right? Click the link or tap it if you're on your phone. You sign up for Onyx, which is a sweepstakes book in 40+ states. Spend $10, get $100 in bonus picks, right? Or any of them, any of these DFS pick'em sites that you may not be on yet if you're in a non-legal betting state. All you do is click claim offer, choose one of any of them or as many as you want, sign up, deposit, minimum $5 or $10 deposit, place a bet or a lineup, and then take the screenshots of your welcome email and your first settled bet. If you did it tonight or you did it in the morning, right? You know what that means? When you email us at support@stokastic.com. What day is it tomorrow, Spags? Tuesday. What? Tuesday. Hold on. Tuesday, the 25th. Yes. What day is Christmas? Oh, I believe that's the 25th of December, in fact. That would be correct. So if you signed up on Onyx, you grab your 100 in bonus picks on a $10 spend. You email us. You got to click claim offer. That's it. Not only are you getting the Thanksgiving slate, the Black Friday, all of the slates in between, because the Sims you can run for every single slate, including every single Showdown slate, even the obscure ones. You're running it all the way through Christmas. And if you signed up on 2 of these, place the bet. So you're talking now like anywhere from 10 to 20 total dollars. A month of the Sims core is $130. Then what does that mean? That means you get this all the way through essentially the NFL postseason for 2 of these. You're getting the Sims. That's $260 value for simply placing a bet by clicking claim offer, signing up with our partners. That's it. Nick, yes, today is the 24th. I'm saying that you wouldn't get this free sub until tomorrow because of when your bet was settled and when we would get back to you, which would be in fact, the day after the 24th, believe it or not, is the 25th. So you'd get that full month. No joke. I think anytime anyone gets an opportunity to time it like that, it's perfect.
You know what I mean? If you can time it to get all of those awesome slates, why not do it?
Yeah, if you're trying to maximize your EV, which is something we talk about with everything here, I think that's the best pathway to it. You're getting also a ton of slates too, because you get some of the stuff like the Black Friday slate coming up next week. You also get, I think we get some Saturday games starting before Christmas as well. So you'll get more, I think, for that too, if you're doing NFL, but just the free deal, taking advantage of that, hopping in, using the Sims tools, really important thing, especially for one of the people in chat that's like, I know what I'm doing, but I've never used the Sims. Just play with them, get a read on it, understand what duped lineups look like. It'll really do you wonders for your DFS play.
Yep. Tech Famous. So you get a lifetime residual off my deposits. I get most 2 months of No, we don't get. They don't do that anymore, dude. They don't do that anymore. You get a affiliate sign us. No, I don't know anywhere else. Anywhere unless outside of like some obscure spots that are still giving you like anything like that. You know, you don't get that anymore.
It's also like, why does everything have to be a grift? Like that, I don't
Right.
know. Like, it's like,
Well,
you're getting all
also-
my residuals. Like what? Your residuals? Nobody cares. That doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, of course. And also, it doesn't, like, obviously, if you're getting a month of The Sims for free, it's mutually beneficial. Nobody's hiding that. If
Otherwise, you could just deposit and get nothing for it. Like,
Yeah,
what's the alternative?
That's what I mean. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's actually, I know it's a great deal, and a lot of people have taken advantage of it. But no, Tech Famous, I wouldn't sit here and lie to you. There is none of that whatsoever. It'd be sick if there was. If there was, I would be pushing the shit out of this right now.
Yeah, you got to negotiate pretty hard to get residuals on people's bets, and many sports books don't want to give them away.
No, that's not happening, dude. No. Plus, you're depositing $5, so don't act like you're going to be jumping to deposit more money if that $5 bet loses. Come on now, I understand how all of this works. Anyway, Spags, can you give me who you think is the optimal captain? If it's not, no worries, Tech Famous. I'm not shitting on you, dude. I'm just telling you. Can you?
I was shitting on him a little bit. I apologize, but I definitely.
I mean, Spags apologized.
Yeah.
Can you tell me if it's not McCaffrey, who you think the optimal captain is going to be? Which I got it right the other day when we did this, and I don't even remember who it was.
I think it's so likely to be McCaffrey, but if it's not him, Rico or Tet, I think would be the most. Like I've talked enough about Bryce Young. I still think the other Panthers would be the most appealing option to me. As I think it tells you what the rest of the lineup should be if you get that right. So I would go Rico or Tet McMillan.
Tet's my guy. Yeah, I just in the event that we're right about this potentially playing out, where San Francisco's pass defense is not good, and they can't get to Bryce, and he actually has time. Tet to me makes a lot of sense here. Once another one, since you went with McMillan, I'll go Kittle, just because Kittle has 1 for 7 downside on any given slate. Kittle also has 5 for 150 and 3 upside. We've seen it. How many times have we seen Kittle absolutely destroy a showdown slate in both ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think he fits the thesis of like, what does it take for McCaffrey to not make it his captain, which is either the entire game situation going south, somebody on the other team beating him out, or it is like a Kittle going for the outlier day and McCaffrey just gets less yardage, gets less touchdown equity as a result. And I think that's possible. And I honestly, I'm with you because I feel better about Kittle having that upside than Juwan Jennings. Pearsall I'm intrigued by, but it feels more like wish casting than anything rooted in data, really.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, with Kittle, he's a unicorn in the sense that he could have 5 receptions for 130. No joke. Like he's done that many times before, where he just breaks off these massive runs after the catch, and he doesn't even need a ton of volume to get there. So, Sotek said Kittle is the one I'm most on at captain and MVP, not running a whole lot of lines, but multiples of Kittle for sure. Look, I'm fine with it. Fine with McMillan. Where else are you guys? For those of you still hanging out, before we hit lock, let me make sure my lineups are in fact in.
They're not a train of dupes for you.
Oh man, I was so confident last time, and we get off this. I'm like, oh, you got it. Remember, I was sick that day, and I just like total insult to injury. And then I had to go and start prepping for week 12 because I do a lot of my prep on Monday for the first look show coming up and for the betting show that I do. I'm good to go. Where would you guys in chat go? Optimal captain, not named Christian McCaffrey. Who is it going to be if it's not? So, like, all right, Tech Famous, don't like this slate. So only playing one lineup, fading Christian McCaffrey. Now, I'm okay. You're playing one lineup. If you're playing one lineup, Spags, you don't like the slate, screw it. You're essentially saying, hey, look, I intend on going into this. I think I'm going to lose. But if something happens with McCaffrey, who isn't playing this guy? I totally get it with one lineup. But if you're going, I'm sorry. But if you're like, I maxed whatever and I have zero McCaffrey, to me, that's just a objectively bad decision.
It's not a great lotto ticket if you try to play the best plays in your one lineup. Like that's, it's not, people don't want to hear that, but like for a showdown, especially, just play people aren't going to play for your one lineup. So Tech Famous, we've made up here. Good call by you for your one lineup.
I hope though, Tech Famous, that you're going with some form of like, see, to me, it would be some form of Niners stack with Purdy.
Yeah.
I don't think the way that I would see this working is if they get up early through the air and then McCaffrey kind of doesn't have to do much.
I just worry people are going to play. I mean, it's for me on the slate, and we're locking anyway, so it doesn't matter. But like Purdy at captain is so owned already that I think that's the way that people are going to try. Like whatever lineup doesn't have McCaffrey is going to go Purdy mega stack. So I would just play like the Niners shit the bed kind of build for if I were doing one lineup like that. But
okay,
it's still the total is the Niners, scoring for 29 points or whatever.
I mean, like a Pearsall captain spot could be crazy there. Though.
Yeah. I see that. Yes, I would support that over Purdy captain for your one lineup because like Purdy captain is going to be like 20% owned. Like
I wasn't even suggesting Purdy at captain. I'm saying a stack with Purdy, like just a San Francisco passing stack. And I'd prefer, because I would agree with Greg here, especially with Purdy coming off the turf toe, that I don't love him at captain. But if you're running one lineup and it's non-McCaffrey, there could be some fun ways to build that. Hell of a sweat that's going to be. Dude, if McCaffrey ended up getting hurt early, oh, man. Most of us are just cooked. And there's going to be – this is, if any slate, this is the slate where if McCaffrey got hurt, Spags, there's going to be what percent of the field is not going to have McCaffrey at all in their lineups?
10. I mean, I think,
right?
Yeah, maybe 15 if it really good. But I think, we could probably find it out, but it's probably like 10.
Yeah. We're looking at talking like around 20 here, but honestly, I think it might be even less than that. I really do. I could see it being even less than that. So we'll see where this slate goes. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Love you all. And we will catch you back here. Tomorrow, First Look Show. Of course, you can find all Spag stuff at Splash Play Pod over on YouTube and at Chris Spags on X, me at Laffy. And of course, over on Tails for all of our free picks all the time. Just download the app, follow us, and turn on notifications. It is the greatest. Good luck, guys. We'll catch you back here for the next one. Bye-bye.